Tourism is one of our leading industries in its contribution to employment and foreign exchange earnings.
And in today's edition of Jamaica Magazine, you'll hear just how well the Tourism and Entertainment Ministry performed last year. We're talking record-breaking achievements. Hi, I'm Theo. Also in the half hour, we'll check in with the Office of the Prime Minister for a quick recap of the major events last week. The magazine unfolds now with top stories from the news desk.
I had a plan for my life. I was going to be a doctor. I was going to be the first in my family to do great things. Then a friend of mine sold me into prostitution. He mashed up my life.
Stop human trafficking. It destroys lives. If you or anyone you know has been a victim of human trafficking, call 811 or 1-888-PROTECT. Be wise. Open your eyes. Spot them. Stop them. A message brought to you by the National Task Force Against Trafficking in Persons.
Good day, I'm Stacey Ann Smith, and this is your GIS News for Monday, January 19. A planned 78-megawatt renewable energy project is on track to begin with a groundbreaking in February. The project includes 1 solar and 2 wind energy plants, which will be constructed in Clarendon, St. Elizabeth and Manchester.
Contracts are now in place, power purchase agreements have been signed, and licenses have been issued.
The Energy Minister made the announcement at a recent Solar Energy Auditing and Lighting Technologies workshop. He said 58 megawatts of wind energy would be supplied by Blue Mountain Renewables and Wigton Wind Farm, while US-based WRB Enterprises would provide 20 megawatts of solar energy. The $196 million project is expected to be completed by March 2016. By that time, the country will be producing 20% of its energy from renewable sources. In the meantime, appliances entering the country will soon be subject to an Energy Standard certification. Energy Minister Philip Paulwell says Cabinet accepted a proposal from his ministry that will enable the Bureau of Standards to provide the certification. He says the move is in line with the shift towards achieving greater efficiency in the country's energy usage.
There are certain places that will throw the appliances here, and sometimes some gifts are too expensive. And we are going to have to say to those of us who want to buy stuff overseas that there will be certain standards, energy standards, that we will not tolerate.
Jamaican entrepreneurs are being encouraged to be proactive in seeking out opportunities to do business with Cuba's population of 11 million people. Foreign Affairs and Foreign Trade State Minister Arnaldo Brown spoke to the opportunities in the wake of Cuba and the United States re-establishing diplomatic relations.
There are possibilities for investors in Jamaica to invest in Cuba as well. It is really for private enterprise to become proactive in terms of seeking out the opportunities that exist there.
He says government stands ready to help large and small businesses explore the possibilities. In the meantime, he says Jamaica looks forward to sitting with Cuba at the Summit of the Americas, which will convene in Panama City later this year, the first time that island will participate in more than 50 years. The Ministry of Health says it has to date successfully quarantined 8 travelers who visited Jamaica from countries with Ebola outbreaks, as the island remains Ebola-free. In a statement this weekend, the ministry revealed that 7 persons were successfully monitored by senior public health officers and have since been released from quarantine or have left the island prior to the end of the quarantine period. The 8th individual remained in quarantine until this past Saturday. The ministry says the travelers arrived in Jamaica within the 21-day incubation period after leaving Ebola-affected countries and were quarantined to safeguard the Jamaican population and minimize any possible risk of introducing the virus into the island. Acting Chief Medical Officer of Health, Dr. Marion Bullock-Dukas, says all of the travelers remained well during the period of quarantine and showed no signs or symptoms of the Ebola virus disease, which is only spread when symptoms and signs appear. Health Minister Dr. Fenton Ferguson is urging all Jamaicans to continue to cooperate with the health team as the ministry remains vigilant and strengthens its Ebola prevention systems. And finally, Youth and Culture Minister Lisa Hanna is urging tertiary graduates to become actively involved in advancing education and development in their communities and the country. She was addressing a recent graduation for 43 educators from the Sam Sharp Teachers College, Monique College and the Micro University College.
As graduates who have successfully completed a Master's of Science degree in Educational Leadership, Reading and Language Arts, you have already signaled that you intend to be serious players in the educational and transformative process, which is crucial to my country and your country's development.
Minister Hanna suggested that as they go out into a changing world, they should think differently and be fearless in how they impart knowledge. And that's it for JIS News Today. I'm Stacey Ann Smith. Thank you for watching.
The Ebola virus is transmitted through direct contact with an infected person's blood or other bodily fluids such as saliva, urine, stool, and semen. The virus can also be spread if broken skin comes in contact with contaminated items like clothing, bed linen, and needles used by an Ebola patient. Symptoms of Ebola include sudden onset of fever, intense weakness, muscle pain, headache, and sore throat. This may be followed by vomiting, diarrhea and rash, impaired kidney and liver functions, and in some cases both internal and external bleeding leading to death. Ebola cannot be spread by someone who does not have symptoms. The time between exposure and when a person begins to have symptoms is known as the incubation period. For Ebola, this is anywhere from 2 to 21 days. Infected patients should be handled by persons wearing proper personal protective equipment, then transferred to designated isolation centers. Protect yourself. Avoid travel to Ebola-affected countries. Avoid contact with infected persons. Don't touch the body of someone who has died from Ebola. Wash hands frequently and use an alcohol-based sanitizer. To know more, call the Health Ministry's Emergency Operations Center at 1-888-1-LOVE. That's 1-888-663-5683.
Last week, Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller commended businesses that have been passing on the savings from the continued fall in world oil prices to consumers. Mrs. Simpson-Miller also joined calls to return, reconnect, and rebuild with God at the National Leadership Prayer Breakfast. Watch now as we recap the major stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister this past week.
The time is ripe for expanding investments in Brand Jamaica. Human trafficking, a priority for the government. And the island's first female public defender is sworn in. I'm Tamara McHale with this week's edition of Jamaica House Weekly. Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller has invited local companies to increase their investment in the country. Pointing to the continued fall in world oil prices and improvements in Jamaica's economic management, Mrs. Simpson-Miller says it's a good time for business expansion.
There is significant improvement in the management of the economy. The business climate is better, and this view is supported by the World Bank, the reputable Forbes magazine, and local business confidence surveys. At the same time, ladies and gentlemen, the lowering of world oil prices is providing a cushion and a window for business consolidation and strategic expansion.
The Prime Minister was speaking after a tour of Lasco Manufacturing Limited's plant at White Marl, St. Catherine. The $2 billion upgrading exercise created 300 new jobs. After viewing the Lasco operations, Mrs. Simpson-Miller commended local companies that have been sharing better financial management and passing on the savings from reduced oil prices to customers.
I want to commend those companies that have found it possible and important to pass on some of those costs reductions through lower prices to our consumers. Some companies might choose to reinvest some of their cost savings to expand production and to create jobs. I commend those companies that are expanding and creating more jobs due to the current energy savings.
Last Thursday, the Prime Minister joined calls for Jamaicans to return, reconnect, and rebuild with God at the 35th National Leadership Prayer Breakfast.
I believe in partnership. We have a partnership going with the private sector, but we have a national partnership. And all Jamaicans are members of this partnership. All we need to do is to unite and work together for the betterment of the country and the betterment of our people.
Mrs. Simpson-Miller also reaffirmed her administration's commitment to tackling human trafficking, particularly trafficking in children. The Prime Minister said she had consistently championed the care and protection of children in international fora such as the United Nations. Proceeds from this year's National Leadership Prayer Breakfast will go towards the Negril-based Theodora project. It targets youth susceptible to human trafficking, providing them with education, skills training, and empowerment.
Today is a very special and historic occasion for our nation as we continue to serve the people of Jamaica and protect and preserve the human rights of all, especially the poor and disadvantaged.
Prime Minister Portia Simpson-Miller was speaking at Friday's swearing-in ceremony for Arlene Harrison Henry, the island's third public defender and the first female head of the office. She urged Mrs. Harrison Henry to support the delivery of justice to all Jamaicans.
Mrs. Harrison Henry, I congratulate you and urge you to be a voice of the voiceless, to loose the chains of injustice in keeping with the motto of the office of the public defender.
Mrs. Harrison Henry is a former head of the Jamaica Bar Association and current chair of the Independent Jamaica Council for Human Rights. The Prime Minister said she was an ideal selection for the post, adding that the appointment was a result of her long track record as well as a testament of the island's progress in advancing gender equality.
I am proud that under my watch, Jamaica has moved from a position of gender inequality in the workplace, especially when it comes to top management positions, to one of true gender equality. Jamaica is now the leading example of the world in this regard.
In a recent International Labour Organization study, Jamaica topped 106 countries, with 60% of women in top management positions in the world. Sport received major focus this past week from ministers at Jamaica House. On Wednesday, Prime Minister Simpson-Miller hosted a cocktail reception for swimmer Alia Atkinson and boxer Nicholas Axman Walters at Vale Royal. As she toasted the guests of honor, Mrs. Simpson-Miller said Atkinson and Walters were examples of humility being the hallmark of greatness.
Tonight we celebrate the successes of these two outstanding Jamaicans who are among our treasured sons and daughters, bringing great esteem to our beloved country and to our people.
By Friday, Minister without portfolio responsible for sport Natalie Nita Headley was dispatched to the 2015 RJR Sportsman and Sportswoman of the Year Awards. Mrs. Nita Headley witnessed Atkinson and Walters walking away with the coveted trophies. Also on Friday, Mrs. Nita Headley toured the Homewood Technical High School to assess how the school could be assisted under the High School Infrastructure Improvement Program. The dominant athletics school is interested in having a third field installed with hopes of converting it into a football field. At the consultation, Mrs. Nita Headley implored the stakeholders to seek out the support of past students and other sources to complement the assistance being offered by the government.
I implore you, at some point in time, while this opportunity exists, you'll have to concentrate at this time on what would be your priority. Either you'd want us to establish that field as your third field, with a vision of perhaps later on introducing a track, right? Or you use an existing field which has the space, has the capacity to place a track, and you are willing to partner, then personally, as an old girl from the school, I certainly wouldn't want to miss that opportunity.
And last week found the Prime Minister continuing to build on Jamaica's long-standing relationship with the People's Republic of China. On Friday, the Prime Minister welcomed the Vice Chairman of the Standing Committee of the National People's Congress of the People's Republic of China, Zhang Baowen. Mr. Baowen was on a two-day visit to the island where he met with other government officials, including the Governor General and the Leader of Opposition. That's where we leave you on this week's edition of Jamaica House Weekly. Join us next time for more of the stories coming out of the office of the Prime Minister. At the beginning of 2014, the Ministry of Industry, Investment and Commerce had one major vision: to help the government meet its strategic priority of job creation and economic growth. During the year, it did several things to achieve just that. Find out what those projects were on January 20 as we recap the ministry's achievements inside Jamaica Magazine.
Our 2014 Year in Review continues now with a look at the major achievements of the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment.
Jamaica love, we wanna feel Jamaica love.
Another record-breaking year. Millions of foreigners vacationing in Jamaica. Improved tourist attractions, new hotels opened, and creating important linkages in the entertainment industry. 2014. Another successful year for the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment.
Tourism is one of our leading industries in its contribution to employment and foreign exchange earnings.
And because of this, Dr. Wickham McNeil and his team developed a number of strategies to pull more visitors to the country, increase foreign exchange earnings, and create employment opportunities. Their strategies, which included a rigorous marketing and advertising campaign, bore fruit. 3.5 million visitors vacationed in Jamaica in 2014. Cruise ship arrivals increased at Jamaica's 3 ports. In all, there were 267 calls in the January to August period, bringing more than 938,000 passengers in comparison to 238 calls in 2013. Another major development came late in 2014 when Montego Bay became the home port for the Thompson Dream, one of the world's largest cruise lines. And at least one cruise vessel will dock there. This means more jobs for Jamaicans and more tourism dollars for the country. In other areas, during July to September, there was a 3.9% growth in the hotel and restaurant sector. Russia and the People's Republic of China were added to the list of countries whose nationals no longer need a visa to visit Jamaica. The relaxing of visa restrictions was another measure implemented by the ministry to increase visitor arrivals and drive economic growth. And in 2014, Jamaica also welcomed America's largest air carrier, Southwest Airlines. To meet strategic priority number 2, job creation and economic growth, the Tourism Ministry secured a number of investments by increasing the nation's room stock. Hundreds of Jamaicans found jobs when 140 hotel rooms were added with the opening of Sensatori Hotel by Charisma Hotel and Resorts in Westmoreland. The Hyatt Ziva Rose Hall Resort will open in early 2015, following a multi-million-dollar renovation in 2014 that transformed the former Ritz-Carlton Hotel property. And while under renovation in Ocheria St. Anne, the Moon Palace Resort, formerly the Sunset Jamaica Grand, employed some 2,000 persons.
These investments are by iconic international brands such as Azul Sensatori, Hyatt, Marriott, the Moon Palace, and Royalton.
In line with fiscal prudence and the pursuit of a credible macroeconomic program, the Tourism Ministry pushed for the Timeshare Vacations Bill, which was passed by Parliament in November. With the country's entry into the timeshare market, Jamaicans who do not have large sums to invest can now take advantage of investment opportunities which could yield high earnings.
Owners of time in a residential unit tend to vacation for a week or more at a time in groups of 2 or more. They buy them as families and travel together. Timeshare owners become constant repeat visitors and behave more like members of the local community in that they shop for groceries, dine out often, and use local services more directly than hotel guests. We are confident of being able to attract the world's most experienced timeshare operating brands to our tourism industry, and by doing so, broaden our country's international appeal. Equally important issue is the matter of ensuring the safety of locals and visitors who seek to enjoy our beautiful beaches.
Endorsing strategic priority number 3, improving security and justice, the ministry responded decisively to incidents involving jet skis, immediately suspending jet ski operations and banning all imports of personal watercraft. By mid-year, the ministry lifted the temporary suspension and issued new regulations that require the registration of all personal watercraft. The ministry, through the Tourism Enhancement Fund, donated cars, motorbikes, and boats at a value of more than $4.3 million to the Jamaica Constabulary Force and paid for repairs to the Negril Police Station. In the last quarter of 2014, the Tourism Ministry supported another successful staging of the annual Jamaica Product Exchange, JPEX, pulling buyers and sellers together in one event. Some 105 buyers, wholesalers, and tour operators from the international market attended the trade show.
What was really interesting about it is that the space of the usual JPEX is about half of the hall. This year, they've taken the entire hall because of the inclusion of that element of it, the manufacturers in particular.
In 2014, the tourism product in St. Anne was improved when Phase 1 of the Ocherius Enhancement Project was completed.
She have a rich history, a beautiful woman with the sweetest gifts, beautiful sunrise and an evening kiss.
4 major projects in Portland were also completed at a cost of more than $48 million. These included repairs to over 3 kilometers of roadway between the communities of Fellowship and Berrydale, refurbishing of the Neville Antonio Park in Port Antonio, renovation of the Portland Craft Village development, and repairs to the Berrydale Rafting Jetty and Loading Bay. In the second city, the Montego Bay Cultural Center was opened after a $109 million refurbishing project. The money came from the Tourism Enhancement Fund.
Many of these projects that we're doing here, whether it's the cultural center or the lighting of the Elegant Corridor, we're doing these things as projects for Jamaicans. They benefit us first. And our visitors who come will also benefit from it.
In 2014, the tourism minister teamed up with the minister responsible for sport and launched Jamaica Sport, an initiative to explore and exploit the commercial opportunities of sport tourism. A technical working group comprised of public and private sector representatives are coordinating the effort. As government moved to solidify Jamaica's cultural and entertainment industries, the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment took steps to strengthen the entertainment sector. Chief among them was the National Registry of Entertainment Practitioners. In June, Cabinet approved it, allowing the ministry to streamline the processes to make the industry fully operational and compliant with the new fiscal incentives regime.
Registration is free, Mr. Speaker. So I urge all entertainment practitioners to register so that they can access tools of trade, free movement, and registration as a certified and bona fide practitioner.
Don't you worry yourself, mama. Chronics is here to your help, Lord.
Through the successful staging of Arts in the Park in February and November, opportunities came for several poets who signed international contracts, while others were invited to perform in England. Professor Mervyn Morris, named Poet Laureate of Jamaica in 2014, traveled with them to the Bristol Festival of Literature. Through another initiative in 2014, the Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment organized a series of events to drive tourist arrivals in the off-peak period from May to August. Dubbed Jamrock Summer 90 Days, 90 Ways, the initiative packaged local entertainment events to woo visitors to the island. By year end, the tourism sector had contributed more than $523 million to the country's gross domestic product. The Ministry of Tourism and Entertainment, earning for the country, providing jobs for Jamaicans, growing the economy.
That can easily change if we allow the cutting of trees, forest fires, animal grazing, crop cultivation, or improper dwellings to destroy our forest reserves. Help preserve Jamaica's flora and fauna. If you know or suspect that someone is hurting our forest reserves, call 1-888-FORESTS. Remember, protecting our forests means sustaining our lives.
Welcome to the FSC Minute. I am Nadine Newsom. Today we explore anti-money laundering and its implications for the FSC regulated sectors. And joining me is Laurice Edwards-Brown, Director of Investigations and Enforcement at the FSC. Welcome to the FSC Minute, Laurice.
Thank you, Nadine.
What is money laundering?
The goal of most criminal activity is to generate a profit. So in order to enjoy these ill-gotten gains, criminals often seek to disguise the source of these funds. So the process by which the criminals seek to put these ill-gotten gains into legitimate source of business or into investments is what is called money laundering.
And what role does the FSC play as it relates to anti-money laundering laws?
The FSC is mandated by Section 62F of the Financial Services Commission Act to put into place measures to reduce the possibility of its regulated sectors, that is the pension sector, the insurance industry, or the securities industry, from being involved in any activity or in any offense relating to money laundering. The FSC seeks to implement such measures to reduce or to mitigate the risk concerning money laundering or financing of terrorism. And when these risks are identified, these measures will seek to alleviate the risks.
Does the FSC provide specific instructions to institutions regarding the procedures to put in place for anti-money laundering compliance?
No, the FSC does not. The FSC is a gatekeeper for the industry, and what we seek to do is to get the industry to work to find out what is it that they need to do to implement measures that can safeguard their own entities from being used into using schemes for money laundering activities.
Thank you, Laurice. My guest today was Laurice Edwards-Brown, Director of Investigations and Enforcement at the FSC. For the FSC Minute, I am Nadine Newsom.
And that's our show. Give us some feedback, won't you? Email Jamaica Magazine at jis.gov.jm, or if social media is more your speed, connect with us on Facebook and Twitter. You may also watch this and other magazines by visiting jis.gov.jm or clicking on our YouTube channel. On behalf of the entire team here at the JIS, I'm Theodore Henry. Thank you for watching.
This has been a production of the Jamaica Information Service, the voice of Jamaica.